Κατέλυσας το Σταυρό σου των θάνατων, ενέωξας των ληστήτων παράδεισον, των μυροφόρων των θρήνων μετέβαλες, και της εις αποστόλης κηρύττην επέταξας, ότι Ανέστης Χριστέ ο Θεός παρέχοντο κόσμο τον Αιγαίος. Και διδηγαδία βουλγά γαζό και ζάκε δίγα βουπα παπα βουλγαδί και γαδί δίκαι διδηγαδί και ζάκε δίγα παβουλγαδί και γαδί ζάκε δι βουλγαβου πάνι παβουλγαδά. You abolished death by your cross. You opened paradise to the thief. You transformed the murderer's lament and ordered your apostles to proclaim that you had risen, O Christ God, granting the world your great mercy.
So, by my late teens, I'm a music major in college. And it takes me till my late 20s to finish, but never mind that now. Point is, I rely on the phone number 02212221 a lot as an anchor throughout my music theory courses. This idea of counting half steps, starting from zero, among other things, keeps me from being thrown off when we start talking about Schoenberg and set classes. I still remember my 20th century music theory professor, a terrific teacher. His name was J. Hook. And he said, if you ever fall asleep in this class when we're talking about Schoenberg and I wake you up with a question, the answer more than likely is 014. That's a very specifically nerdy kind of joke, but it sticks with me. And those theory classes also introduced me to the idea that how we divide up the octave is a question of math, Yes. And at the end of the day, we use the math to describe and to explain why things sound the way they do, not to prescribe. And if we try to use it to prescribe, we get in trouble. In other words, an equal-tempered major scale isn't a mathematical inevitability. Quite the opposite, in fact. If anything, it's a workaround for a math problem we can't quite figure out how to solve. And this also ties into an idea one of my earlier theory instructors talks about in a discussion about Bach, as memory serves. And I remember him saying, in Bach's day, different keys sounded like themselves. There wasn't any of this equal-tempered nonsense. That was an idea that was new to me. And it opened up a whole can of worms, really. I mean, sure, I knew that pitch had crept up over the centuries, and that we call, for example, A today was probably closer to an A sharp in Mozart's day, because pitch has crept up close to half a step. But, we're tuning the scale differently depending on the period. So maybe the phone number's 1, its half step, isn't actually the irreducible implied minimum? In the immortal words of Keanu Reeves, whoa. We'll come back to that. In my 20th century theory course, we also talk about ways of organizing the octave that don't assume the equal-tempered diatonic scale as the unalterable norm. We talk about pentatonic, octatonic, whole tone, that kind of thing. And we talk about microtones, especially, as I recall, through the works of a composer named Harry Partch. More on him later. And I kind of got the math, and it made enough sense. See what I did there? But it was really difficult for me to conceive of it mentally, and I certainly couldn't really hear the difference internally. Not yet. Now, to talk about albums for a moment. The 3 I'll highlight this week involve no film scores. The first I'll mention is Choir of Westminster Abbey, John Tavener, Innocence. I sought out this 1995 release because in 1997 I started singing professionally with choral groups in the Pacific Northwest. And my first gig was a program called Tavener with a Seattle Renaissance polyphony ensemble called Tudor Choir. As the name of the program suggests, it combined the music of English Renaissance composer John Tavener with 20th century English Orthodox convert composer Sir John Tavener. And it was my introduction to both. May their memories be eternal. It was also, for a point of historical interest, a collaboration with a Portland chamber vocal ensemble I had never heard of before called Capella Romana. I'll say more about that later. The Tavener program was my first explicit exposure to Orthodox liturgical texts. So far as I know, certainly my first time singing a Trisagion. Tavener has a lovely Slavonic setting for choir paired with a solo cello. Song for Athena was a big deal at that point since it was September 1997, and it had just been sung at Princess Diana's funeral. And so we added that to the program, if memory serves, at the request of the English consulate. It wasn't difficult to notice that Tavener used drone extensively, or as I was inclined to call it at the time, pedal point. And the singers we had singing the drone made it sound like we were being strafed by fighter jets. I mean, it was quite the aural experience. And the Westminster Abbey disc contained enough of the Tavener side of the program that I snatched it up when I saw it and listened to it over and over and over and over and over again. The whole experience, performing and listening, changed a lot about what I thought was possible with choirs, certainly. Tudor Choir themselves put out an interesting recording in 1996 called the Shape Note Album, and I picked that up when I started singing with them. It captures a really specific kind of sung Americana that's common in Appalachia and parts of the South, parts of the Midwest, parts of New England. It's such a distinctive sound that's a long way from the Western classical technique, very, very bright and brassy. I mean, we could say unrefined if we want to go there. Again, I had never really heard a choir intentionally sound this way. And then the members of the group who participated in the recording and in a lot of the various Shape Note concerts that Tudor Choir did said that the real Shape Note people thought that Tudor Choir had maybe toned it down too much. And I have to say, this raised many questions for me. And it got me thinking along lots of different lines, roads I hadn't really gone down before. Last recording for this week, I had a singer friend in college who was one of the school's star baritones, and for various reasons, after he graduated, he walked away from it all and reinvented himself as a singer, songwriter, and guitarist. One day in, I'm going to say 2002, this friend of mine calls me up and he asks if I would be interested in going to a show put on by somebody he had taken a residential seminar with in France, a French-Algerian acoustic guitarist named Pierre Bessouzin. Sure, why not? It was an amazing show, and I have seen Pierre 3 times since then, and beauty and virtuosity just stream from his fingers. And he's also a fantastic composer. He plays exclusively in a tuning called Dadgad, a tuning which I was a little bit familiar with from Led Zeppelin's song Kashmir. It's a tuning that's all about fourths, fifths, and octaves. D to A to D, D to G, G to A, and then A to D. And that makes it ideal for modal music. And Pierre Bessouzin started off in the 70s, drawing from influences and compositions in the Celtic, Sephardic, Spanish, and Greek folk repertoires, and what have you. He eventually developed his own style that incorporated all of that, plus various jazz stylings, and his own quirks. And then in the last few years, I have heard him rework things like Turkish pieces. There's so much about Pierre that's worth hearing. And that first show 23 years ago, really was just the tip of the iceberg. Nice Feeling, N-I-C-E, but pronounced Nice for the city in France, Nice, was kind of a greatest hits compilation that I picked up that night, and it was just the right introduction, spanning several chapters of his work, and just really giving a good snapshot of all the different things that he did up to that point. Well, that's it for this week. As before, I've linked to YouTube playlists for all of those. Love to hear your reactions to any or all of them if you've never listened to any of them before, or even if you have and you noticed something new. If you've connected with this or found it useful in any way, please like and subscribe. And if you are at all inclined, please consider making a gift to Capella Romana at the link provided, www.capellaRomana.org/give. Thank you very much, and more soon. Bye. Happy Thanksgiving.